when we talked about doing this and talked about a presentation that was sort of based on our system, what do we do? I had one idea in mind, and then just by chance someone had recommended a book to me called Start With Why, which was written by a guy named Simon Senek. And I started reading the book, and in all honesty, first couple, I was like, I don't think I like this book. I think it's pretty simple. And why? Okay, why? That makes sense. But I kept going, kept reading, and then all of a sudden it hit me, and I started writing notes in the margins of the book, and I started realizing, I was like, this is going to be an unbelievable presentation. And so the last 3 presentations I've done, just by chance I've done like 3 in the last month, have all been based around this same idea. And then when I started thinking about what I was going to do for you guys, the same idea came to mind. Okay, why? Because when you start talking about a system, why are we doing the things that we're doing? Because I think that, for you guys, is the most important part, because we're going to, and as Don said, we're going to talk about things that you might not be doing, that you might not believe, that you might have been told differently about, and I'm going to try to hit the why part of this. I love this quote, but it's actually very true. It's amazing how, you know, even at this, I talk all the time and I still get nervous. Right until I stand up, until I start talking, then I'm not nervous at all. But when I'm sitting there and Don is talking, I'm really nervous. Then when he said I was doing CrossFit stuff, I went over from nervous to insulted. I was like, I would never do that, ever.
He was doing pull-ups with a bar.
Yes, exactly. No, I'm teasing Don. But, so, I just want to thank, I don't know if Bobby actually just left, but Bobby and Kevin and Diane and Carrie and everybody on the staff. You know, I will guarantee you, if you like the morning, you're going to like the afternoon better. Don't think I'm going to come for the lecture and then I'm going to leave. I would tell you that would be a massive mistake, because we've been doing this. We'll get to that. I'm not even going to say it, because I'm going to tell you in a second. I've got all kinds of stuff. I don't want to sit here and try to sell you stuff, but if you're interested, strengthcoach.com is a really interesting website. Basically, articles, videos, question and answer. It's a paid site that I run with another friend of mine, Anthony Renner. Strength Coach Podcast is free. If you're not listening to Strength Coach Podcast, you're crazy. I think he's up to, I don't even know, 150 episodes or something like that, 160 episodes, and that's completely free. You can just go down, you know, if you're a commuter, and I know almost everybody, if you're in Boston, you're a commuter, whether you want to be or not. So to have that opportunity to learn while you're sitting in your car is a pretty good opportunity. Body by Boyle Online, which Kevin, who's sitting back there, has done an amazing job. It's more of an education site than strengthcoach.com is. We film all our staff meetings. We film every in-service that we do. This talk will actually end up on Body by Boyle Online. We're now probably at 250 hours of content. Most people's biggest complaint there is that they can't watch everything that's there. That's my email address. I always tell everybody the same thing. I pretty much answer every email that I get. So if you have a question, ask it. If you become a pain in the ass, I will tell you. You know, I don't want to be pen pals, but I do want to be open and approachable. But I get some people like start emailing me every day, you know, asking me questions about their workouts. I'm like, no, that's not what we're going to do. I said, you know, I was born to do this literally. This is actually, if you can see the TVs in the background, that's a picture I've taken of a picture on a wall in a bar. But the guy with the tie is my father. And I have been going to practice for as long as I can remember. My father, it's crazy. My father is in the BU Hall of Fame for football. Played with Harry Gannis, if anybody here is a real student of ancient history of Boston. But Harry Gannis is, the Gannis Arena at Boston University is named after Harry Gannis. I ended up with an office in a Gannis Arena. And I grew up as a little kid with like we had a Harry Gannis bobblehead. You know, we grew up with Harry Gannis memorabilia in my house. So it's crazy how it kind of goes around and comes around. But my father ended up, I always said, the reason I show that is he's coaching basketball. He's in the BU Hall of Fame for football. But he won 2 state championships in basketball. And when I went to Springfield College, one of the things that they told us is you can coach anything. It doesn't matter. You don't have to have played it. You don't have to really know anything about it. You just have to know how to coach. And I feel like with us, you know, we're probably all personal trainers in this room, but the reality is we're probably all life coaches in this room. We're probably helping people. I always said we're the best practitioners of medicine in the world. There is no one more powerful than you guys sitting in front of me in terms of making people healthier. Because if you send somebody to a doctor, they get drugs. That's the reality of the situation. And drugs, if you've ever read Ultra Prevention, which is a great book, Mark Hyman, he said it's like going in, telling the check engine light is on, and somebody giving you duct tape, saying go out in the car and stick this over the light on your dashboard. You won't see that anymore, and you'll be fine. And that's medicine in America. What's your symptom? Oh, I got something that'll make that symptom go away. Did I get any healthier? No, but whatever it was you were complaining about, it's gone. No, you got indigestion here, Prilosec. got high blood pressure here, low pressure, whatever it is. But we're not, you guys are doing something to actually make people healthier, so it's important. As Don said, I've been very, very lucky. I got to work with the women's Olympic team in soccer in 2004, which seems like a long time ago now. I was at Boston University actually for 30 years. I got to win a national championship in 1995 and in 2009. I worked with the women's Olympic team in 1998 when they won the gold medal, and I worked with them this time in 2010 when unfortunately, or 14 when we won a silver medal, sadly. I always say that's not a photo bomb, that's a real picture. I got to spend 2 years with the Red Sox, got a World Series ring. So the only reason I say it is not to brag, just to let you understand, I've got a really broad range of experiences in a really broad range of areas. As Don said, I spent 10 years with the Boston Bruins from 91 to 99. I was lucky to be there through like the Cam Neely, Adam Oates. It's funny, my friends now are running the place, which I think is bizarre that Donnie Sweeney is the general manager and Cam is the president, but that's what happens when you get old. I invented combine training, according to this guy in this book. That's why I always put this up. Pete Williams says in the draft that I invented combine training for the NFL Combine. I don't know if I did, but I am standing by Pete's opinion that I did. So as of right now, that's a fact because it's in a book. I've been lucky enough in college to be exposed to some of the best strength and conditioning people in the world, probably totally by accident, just by virtue of the fact that I went to Springfield College. The guy in the middle, Mike Wojcik, is actually in Dallas now, but he's got more Super Bowl rings than anybody in the history of the National Football League. He has 6 Super Bowl rings. He's got 3 New England rings and 3 Dallas rings. He was my dorm director. The day I showed up at Springfield College, I walked in and there was this big weightlifting looking guy standing at the front door. And I started talking to him, and it turned out he was the track field event coach. He had just got done being a thrower at Boston College and was at Springfield to do his grad work and was going to coach the throwers. But the most important thing I always said is he had every muscle and fitness, every strength and health, and every Ironman cataloged in his room in milk crates by month and by year. He liked oldies music and he liked beer. I was like, yes, this is where I'm going to spend the rest of my time. And I did. I spent a ton of time in his room. The guy to his right is the second longest tenured guy in the NFL, Rusty Jones, who just retired. He was a graduate assistant football coach when I got there. The guy on the left just passed away, Bill Starr. If you're a real student, now one of these days I said I'm going to do a history talk, and I think I'll probably bore the shit out of people, but it'll still be good. But he wrote a book called Strong Shall Survive, which was probably the first really good book on strength and conditioning in the early, he probably wrote it in 74 or 75 when he was at University of Hawaii. But the guy that taught our weight training class that year at Springfield had just come from University of Hawaii and trained with Bill Starr and brought this book with him. So, I just ended up, and that's why I said Outliers. If you've read Outliers, one of the things it says in Outliers is everything happens for a reason. We just don't know the reason until we really look into the background. So if you're writing notes, so far we've talked about Start With Why, right? We've talked about Outliers, so be writing these books down. You should all be reading. It's good for you. We tell our kids that, right? Words to the wise. See the similarities, not the differences. Don't get stuck on what's different about what we do. Try to think about the things that we could potentially do that might help you with your programming. The guy that, Ron Ruska, who founded Postural Restoration Institute, when we were talking about postural restoration, but it doesn't make any difference, but he said, use today in the words to make your existing program that you're very familiar with and feel very strongly about more successful. So that's what I want you to think about today. Are there things that I'm going to take out of this that are going to let me go back and be better at what I do? You don't have to agree with everything. You don't have to buy all my whys. I hope you do. I hope the scientific explanation is strong enough where you go back and think, wow, I have to do all these things. But if you don't, maybe you go back and you do one of these things. If you just go back, if your clients don't foam roll and you decide, I buy the foam rolling thing, I'm going to go back and have my clients foam roll, that will be good enough by itself. And hopefully there'll be more than that. This is one of the things they talk about is start by finding your passion. What I've realized, my passion is consuming information so that I can understand it and make it simple and pass it on to other people. That's what I've found that I'm good at. I'm a really good filterer because I can read a boatload of stuff and I can pretty quickly separate the good stuff from the bad stuff. And this is, I love this quote because I'm not better than you guys, I just got to the knowledge first. When I read that quote, I said, yeah, because I don't think I'm that much smarter than anybody else. But I do think that in a lot of situations, I get to the information. Tia, will you do me a favor? Will you ask someone to grab me a trash bag? Thank you. But it's that ability to get to information And then, like Dawn was saying, then investigate the information, start looking at the information and saying, does this really make sense? Is there something here? Because one of the things I've always said is, I am really good at cheating. And I always talk about the fact that if I was going to open Mike Boyle University, cheating would be first class. Like the first thing that we did would be cheating. Because when we're kids, we're told, like, don't look at anybody's paper, don't cheat, do your own work. And then you get out in the real world and you realize that's bullshit, excuse my language, but I mean, the better you cheat, the better you do. Right? What's the key? Like if I, class, I'd be like, okay, first class, look around, size everybody up. Who are you going to sit next to? You're going to be allowed to copy. But you've got to make a decision right now. Like, do you want your dumb friend to be next to you? Or do you want like the nerdiest kid in class to be next to you? Because I'm going to let you copy everything off his paper if you want to. But that's what you do in the real world. You steal other people's stuff and you use it. And the key is, do you find smart people to steal from or dumb people to steal from? In my situation, I think I've done a really good job of finding, I don't think I'm smarter than Stuart McGill, but I don't need to be. I just need to go sit in the front row at the lecture, listen to what he says, and then go do it. He knows more about backs than I do. He spent his whole life studying backs. So it doesn't have to be complicated. You just got to be good at swiping stuff. And I'm good at that, right? This is the other thing. And this is from another book, Never Eat Alone. Everybody here should read Never Eat Alone. Never Eat Alone is the How to Win Friends and Influence People for the Digital Era. Incredibly good book, Keith Ferrazzi. But this guy, Clay Shirky, who's like some, Google guy or something like that. He's some person from the information world, said the problem isn't information overload, it's filter failure. And it's another one of these, I write these quotes down all the time because that's pretty accurate. Yeah, there's a ridiculous amount of information right now because of the internet. But what really is central to your success or failure is your ability to filter that information. Can I look at that information and make a conclusion based on what I read? Can I look at that information and say, how does it apply to what I'm going to do? How does it make me better at my particular profession? Thank you, Tia. So what do I believe? I just need a trash bag. And then if I can get, sorry, I hate to make you run around because you're probably actually working for a living out there. I just need 2 bands of 2 different thicknesses, like a 1 inch and a 1.5 or something. Yeah, any of them that we have. I realized I forgot my props. This will all make sense later. Woody Guthrie said, any fool can make something complicated. It takes a genius to make it simple. So if someone can't explain to you, I always say, if you can't explain what you do, you don't know what you're doing. Whenever anybody starts talking a lot about big words, say, I don't know if you're going to understand that, I'm like, well, you're full of shit. You don't know what you're talking about. Because if you knew what you were talking about, and sorry, I know this, I'll probably offend some of you people because I'll swear a reasonable amount. I won't say a lot, but I'll try to keep it to the lower level swears. But unfortunately, my language skills are limited. But you've got to be able to simplify things so that people can understand. If you can't, then you don't really know what you're talking about. You're just acting like you know what you're talking about. Lots of big words, throw lots of buzzwords in there and mesmerize your clients. This is also important. There's what you know and then there's what you can implement. Sometimes the two are really different. You might have clients where you think, I can't do this. I didn't write the article, but I just sort of relinked to an article about training overweight clients because the guy on my strengthcoach.com client said, I just got a new client, 60 pounds overweight, and we're having all kinds of trouble, thank you, Tia, getting up and down off the floor. And I linked back to the article because I had already written the article. And the article is all about this idea. There's what you know and what you can implement. And I said, one of the things I said was, forget everything I just told you. Forget about foam rolling. Forget about stretching. Realize when you've got a 400-pound client, a 400-pound client trying to foam roll is not, I always said they lose the roller. It's like, where'd the roller go? Right? And they can't, their arms get tired and they can't get up and down off the floor. You've got all these problems. And people are like, but you said you got to do this, this, and this. And I'm like, well, I did say that, except that not in this situation. Not if the client weighs 300-400 pounds. Not if, I said, not if it's 300-pound Turkish get-ups every time they get up or down off the floor. Right? But that's what's happening. When you think like those people, you're like, ugh. I mean, it's a war to get up and down. And you realize the least number of times you get down on the floor, the better it is. There's a lot of things that are different. So we just got to look at this and realize there's what you know and what you can implement. And one size, like I'm going to tell you one size fits all 90% of the time. But I'm also going to tell you got to think about the other 10% of the time. Common sense is not very common. That's That's CrossFit in a nutshell. Common sense is not. I always tell people, if you believe in CrossFit, you're not very intelligent. Because it's like being any type of science denier that's out there. The science all tells you that this is stupid and that you're going to hurt people. And there's no way around it. It doesn't make sense. So we're going to go back to this idea. Why? Why is the center of the target? Why, then how, then what? Why am I going to do what I'm going to do? Then how am I going to do it? Then last, what am I going to do? What we do most of the time from an exercise standpoint as personal trainers is we start with what? I know what I want to do, and that's my problem. That's one of my major problems with CrossFit. You start with this. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what. And everyone's going to do the what. And then how? We don't care how. Do it any way you can. Doesn't matter. How it does, the shittier the better. Just go hard. Do as many as you can. Right? Then you get to the why in the middle, and you're like, why would you do? I always say to people, I can make you sore. But if I said to you, here's my new program, I take you out back behind the gym with a baseball bat, and I beat the crap out of you. I hit you in the legs, I hit you in the back, I hit you in the arms, and when you leave, you're like, man, I was sore. And I say to you, that was awesome. Do you want to come back tomorrow? Do you want to bring your friends? You probably wouldn't do that, would you? But why would you let someone do that with weights? Like just beat the crap out of you randomly, and then have a really good workout. It makes no sense, right? But our controversy, my controversy, the controversy here, our controversy as we have a conversation will be in the why. So what I need to do is I need to say to you, this is why the things that we're going to do this afternoon from 1 to 3 or whatever the practical experience runs from, this is why we're doing what we're doing. And what you're always going to say, and this is what a lot of people in our fitness world will say, well, why can't I just do what we always did? And we're going to talk about that. Because sometimes people are starting with what? Like, I have a way that I train. Like, I love people say, well, I have a way that I train people. Like, wow, it must be great to be that omniscient, like to just have the way. You should get a religion, because that would work really good too. You know what I mean? Like, how can you have a way that you train people? I mean, this thing should be constantly morphing based on learning. And that's why Don said, people always, I change a lot. And people, it's really funny. Some people will criticize me. Well, you're always changing your mind. I'm like, well, that's called learning. And when I change my mind, I'm doing something called reading, which is also good. Everybody should read, everybody should learn, everybody should change. Because, that's just, we go back to the common sense is not very common. That's common sense. If you really think 20 years ago or 30 years ago you had it, if you did have it figured out, for those of us that are over 55, we would still be doing 1 set to momentary muscular failure on a Nautilus machine the way we did it, when I was in high school. I joined a Nautilus place because that was the way. That was the current religion at that time, the CrossFit of its day. Every town had a little, 16-station Nautilus place in it. And I belonged to a regular gym and a Nautilus place. And I would go every other day to one and then to the other. You're shaking your head like, yeah, I did that too. And a bunch of people probably did. But what if the way we always did it was wrong? I firmly believe the way we always did it was wrong. The way we have always done everything is probably wrong. If not completely wrong, pretty close. So when I look at sort of where we started and where we've evolved to now, a lot of stuff was wrong. This is another book, Creating Magic, really good book. Lee Cockrell is I should look up his title because I always say I think. I believe his title is the executive director at Disney World. So he's done okay, right? He started out as an Army cook and rose from Army cook to executive director at Disney World. It's a really good book because it's just strictly an autobiographical book. But the most interesting thing in the book to me is that in the course he was running restaurants. That's basically what he did. He went from cook to managing restaurants. And during the course of his restaurant management experience, not once but twice did waiters break bottles over his head. So he came home the second time with stitches in his head, and his wife said, Lee, don't you think you should work on your management style? He said, it's not the first time you've been hit in the face by a bottle by a waiter that you've been trying to help do his job better, but the second. You might need to reconsider your management style. And he did. He got better. Instead of, the older, because he was an Army guy in the beginning, and he was yelling and screaming at everybody and thinking, hey, that's how everybody's going to get better, and realizing that, guess what? That doesn't work. During World War II, just before the Americans entered the war, they were studying the big guns of the Germans. They found they could fire a shell every 10 seconds. The best the Americans could do was 1 every 30 seconds. They assigned a colonel to study the matter. He found that the gunners were told to wait 20 seconds after firing a shell. When he asked why, everyone said, because it's in the manual. The colonel went back to examine the World War I manual. It said, fire the shot and wait 20 seconds. Frustrated, he went back to the Civil War manuals. They said, fire the cannons and wait 20 seconds to steady the horses. Okay? I believe that is very similar to a lot of the things that we do now. When we start to examine, when we back up the why and start to really look deeply into the why, we find out, ooh, what they told us is kind of flawed. Some of the things that they said don't have a real lot of basis in science. They have a lot of basis in this guy said this in a gym class someplace. So, a fundamental question. Why did we start doing what we're doing in the first place? This is the first thing you have to ask yourself. Why did I start doing what I'm doing in the first place? Where did my program design come from? What made me think this? Whatever it is that you do, whatever your philosophy is, where did it come from? Because if you do that while you're sitting here thinking, and hopefully you're going to, and then we start talking about some of this stuff, I think you're going to buy a lot more of what I'm selling. So for us, why am I a strength and conditioning coach? Why are you a personal trainer? What's our job? What are we supposed to do? I know what my job, I mean, with younger kids, maybe it's help them make a high school team. Maybe it's help them make a college team. Maybe it's help them play professional sports. When I get professional clients, it's help them play professional sports longer. It's really not, no one comes to me and says, I'm not training people to win the world powerlifting championships. No one comes to me and says, make me as strong as you possibly can. We don't train those kind of people. Like bodybuilders, I don't train any bodybuilders. No one comes in here and says, I want to get huge. I don't care. I'll take steroids. I'll do whatever you want. We don't train those people. So we have a fairly good understanding of what our why is. And for us, really simple, 3 goals. Prevent injuries caused by training. So this goes back to my CrossFit example. If you get hurt training, it breaks rule 1 because you can't train anymore. You're training to be healthier. If someone comes to you and said, I want to come to your facility, I want to work out, they may want to look better, they may want to lose weight, they may want to feel better, but whatever it is that they want to do involves them being able to do it. They got to show up and train. If you're doing things in training that are so inherently dangerous that they get injured and can't train, that is self-defeating. And that's what I mean in terms of common sense. That should be so incredibly evident. If you're getting more like, the only thing that should happen here should be an accident. If somebody sprains their ankle or somebody breaks their finger throwing a medicine ball, that's an accident. Going to be unavoidable. If someone gets hurt, trying to squat 400 pounds or trying to deadlift 400 pounds or, trying to do, as many pull-ups as they can, that's our fault. We're supposed to be better than that. And then you go to number 2, prevent injuries in competition. For me, competition is a game. For our clients here, most of you guys, competition is life. Prevent injuries in life. Make those people feel better. So I always tell people, how you're doing a good job? You're doing a good job when your clients come back and say, I feel better. I feel better getting out of bed. I feel better when I shovel snow. I went and snow skied this winter and I felt better. When your clients tell you they feel better, like I don't care if I got an unbelievable workout. Who gives a shit if you got an unbelievable workout? If that does not lead us to something better, like you feeling better, you moving better, you looking younger, then that didn't really do us any good because the purpose isn't to design workouts that make people tired. I could do that all day. That's easy. The purpose is to design programs that make people better. Whatever their better is, you can decide. Everybody's going to have a different better, but they got to be better. And then 3, improve their performance. And when we think about performance, like I said, if we're talking about average people in health clubs, that's improve their life. Are they better lifting kids? Are they better carrying groceries? I had a really good example. Someone was saying that, they had one of these, women who didn't want to pick up more than 5 pounds. And he was like, how do I talk to her? And I said, well, one way, the guy said one way would be to bring in bags of groceries and weigh them. That might get her to realize that would make a difference. One might be to ask her how much her kids weigh. I had a very, very wealthy client who, had gotten remarried to a younger woman, had a young daughter, and his daughter was growing. And as she was getting bigger, it was easier and easier for me to get him to lift more weight. Because I was like, what does she weigh now? And he's like, 30. I'm like, well, shit, you got to be able to lift 30, right? You got to curl 30, don't you? And he's like, absolutely. And you got to be able to lift 40 up off the ground over your head, don't you? And he was like, yeah. But he was one of those guys like, I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to lift too much weight. I'm like, hey, this is Milo and the Bull here, kid. This person's not going to stop growing for you. They might at 90, 100, 110, maybe 130. My daughter now, like she comes running at me for a hug and I'm like, whoa, don't jump because you're really big and I could get hurt because she's big and strong. And I know I can't do that anymore. But if you get out of order, and this obviously we started with this from a strength and conditioning standpoint, but if you get out of order, you risk having key players miss key games. If you get out of order, think about your world. People can't go to work. That's a big deal. From an economic standpoint, when someone says, I threw my back out, I tore my rotator cuff, I got to go have surgery, I got to take 5 weeks off. That's a massive failure as a professional. You did not help that person. And in fact, you hurt them, right? So we got to be smarter than that. We've got to be better than that. We've got to be able to balance risk and benefit. I say risk benefit's a scale. And it depends on who the person is. I've got young athletes. They want to get to college. They want to play professional sports. They're looking for big benefit. I'm going to probably take higher risk. I'm going to probably do things that are higher risk. If I've got a professional athlete, I work for the Red Sox guys who are making $20 million. They're already signed. I got to be really careful because if they get hurt, the team gets hurt, the guy, he still gets paid. So that, from that standpoint, it doesn't really hurt him, but maybe later on down the line when he's trying to get another contract, it hurts him, right? But the idea is the risk is I'm going to take much less risk with a professional athlete than I would with a college athlete. Because the benefit for that college athlete is high. He might get $20 million. The benefit for the guy who's already getting $20 million, not so high. And when you think about risk benefit with the average adult, the loss of work, the loss of money, the loss of disability. And I mean, some of these things, when you see what happens to people, if you've got someone that works with their hands, that type of, any type of injury that puts them out of work can be really significant. We're almost lucky. Personal training is a white-collar industry in general. So you can probably get away with hurting more people and have less economic impact than you might in a blue-collar world, which still doesn't make it right. So what's our why? To improve our clients while keeping them healthy. My early experience proved that my early philosophies made these tasks mutually exclusive. I couldn't train the way I used to train and make people more healthy. So I changed. I couldn't train the way I used to train and have people make money for long periods of time. So I changed. I started to realize, okay, we can't do what we always did. But I was like everybody else. I started out, as a power lifter, and I started out with the same idea that, okay, how much can you squat, how much can you bench? I mean, that was where we all came from initially, at least the male half of the room. Kind of like I got women over here. It's looks like a bad high school dance, but I don't know if it was, you're the only smart one here. But we talk about the evolution of a trainer, right? Like everybody starts out, and this is more of a guy's evolution, sorry. But like every guy starts out, he wants to look better, wants to meet girls. Then he realizes that that's really not, once he's in the weight room, he realizes that people don't really look at him. If a bodybuilder, I'd be like, you're a bodybuilder, whatever. So all of a sudden he becomes a powerlifter. Now I gotta lift really heavy stuff so people will see how strong I am and I'll be huge, right? And then they suddenly become the injured powerlifter or the injured bodybuilder. And a lot of times that starts people down the road, down the right road usually. Because you don't realize how stupid you are usually until you hurt yourself. And that's the bad thing. You can usually hurt a lot of other people and not have the same epiphany that you have until you hurt yourself. And start looking and going, oh, maybe this isn't as smart as I thought it was going to be. So, obviously we're going to talk about making things safer, better, healthier, right? So what are my beliefs? I'm going to tell you they're based on two things. What the science says, but I'm not a science guy. I'm not a research guy. And then what my experiences tell me. I think the key is to combine the two things, to look at what the science says and to look at what your experience says and to see if you can make those two things mesh together, which is what we're going to do. When we hit the whys, I got to make sure, okay, 10:44, so we'll take a break a little after 11 and let you guys stretch your legs, go to the bathroom. So why do we foam roll? This is why I had Tia bring in the bag, because I think this is a central point when we start talking, because the first thing that we do with every client, not with some clients, every single client, if you come in here, the first thing you do is foam roll. And basically it comes up from Thomas Myers. So if you haven't read Anatomy Trains, you should read Anatomy Trains. It's kind of a long, dense book. And I would say just get it and read the beginning stuff and then look at all the pretty pictures. But the first 20 pages kind of give you the gist of what's going on. But Myers is a Rolfer. For those of you who don't know, and I did not know when I started reading the book, is that Rolf is a person. Ida Rolf. So Myers was an original student of Ida Rolf who invented this whole school of body work, which is basically a very aggressive form of massage. But Myers, for whatever reason, was the first guy to sort of move into our world. Rolfers before just kind of existed way over here somewhere, and people kind of found a Rolfer. You're like, okay, I can't get any better. And someone said, oh, you might want to go try this person who's going to, like, you know, kick your ass with his elbows and his knees, and it's going to really hurt, but you're going to feel better. But Myers came up with two concepts. One's called locked long, one's called locked short. And it's really, really simple. And it's very scientific. So if I sit, right, a lot, like this, the tissue on the back of my body becomes locked long, which means it is consistently on stretch. And by virtue of being on stretch, it becomes more collagenous. It actually lays down more collagen. It starts to reform itself to get used to this constant force that is being applied to it. The tissue on the other side, if we just think front side, my pecs, my abs, my hip flexors, that stuff becomes locked short. So that becomes more dense and more collagenous, but in a shortened position. And this is natural adaptation to movement, right? What causes you to lock long, and this is what you said, why the trash bag? Creep. You can read all these explanations of creep, which I will, but I will explain creep right now in one simple demonstration. Okay, if I put my hand in this trash bag like this and I start pushing, what do we notice? The bag stretching. If I take my hand out, is the bag going to go back to its resting length? It is not. That's creep. That's tissue under constant tension from basically forward head, forward chest, back rounded. You start to experience this creep. The result of creep is an increase in collagen because this stuff that's getting stretched and strained needs to try to repair itself. It does repair itself, but it repairs itself in the lengthened position, right? It doesn't bounce back. But when you want to undo creep, and this is what Rolfers did, soft tissue work. So foam rolling is the solution to creep. We all have creep. We're all experiencing creep right now. I mean, unless you're one of these people, oh no, I sit perfectly bolt upright all the time. I never slouch, I never shrug, my head never goes forward. Creep. It only takes 15 minutes. Mechanical creep, defined as elongation of tissue beyond its intrinsic extensibility resulting from a constant load over time. So I didn't make up creep. Creep is real. Meaning everyone needs to foam roll. We need to change the nature of that muscle tissue. We need this, because the good thing about muscle tissue, it's like Play-Doh. What happens to Play-Doh when you leave it out of the can? It gets hard and crusty. The body, when you expose it to creep, right? What happens to Play-Doh, you know, when you put a little water on it and you start moving it back around again? You got like brand new Play-Doh, right? You can take Play-Doh, you can take your kid's Play-Doh, within 5 minutes you got Play-Doh again. You got the same stuff you started with that was still in the can. Unfortunately, muscle tissue doesn't work quite that way. And unfortunately, bone actually remodels. Wolff's Law of bone remodels the same way. But we can reverse this process. But we need to, there's only one way to do it, soft tissue work. So you got to be doing this every day, day in and day out. It has to be part of what you do all of the time. If you look at, and this is from McGill, sitting with the back slouch for as little as 20 minutes can result in increased laxity of the posterior spinal ligaments, because it's not just muscles. Ligaments experience creep too. It may take 30 minutes or more for these ligaments to regain their previous level of stiffness. This is why you see people blowing out discs when you think, why did they blow out a disc? Creep. Constant load over time. That's why the people, oh, you know, I just picked up a pencil. Well, that was all it took to get you over the cliff. But you'd been going, you know, you'd been on the edge for a long time.
What do I say?
You know, so for us, this is actually in Switzerland in 2010. But no matter who we have, this is the women's Olympic ice hockey team, the first thing we do, we got a bag of rollers, we dump the rollers out. Now if you look here, we've got rollers, we've got tennis balls, we've got lacrosse balls, we've got big peanuts, we've got small peanuts. We get all kinds of stuff for people to roll on, for them to manipulate their soft tissue with. So when we talk about this, we're talking about something I should have, that's absolutely, positively a must do. Like if you can sit here and listen to what I'm saying and then not go back and think, okay, I need to have every client foam roll, then I didn't do a very good job. Because this is undeniable science. Stretching. This is Myers' lock short idea, right? And stretching, rolling doesn't work as well on the front side. It still works, but I don't think rolling doesn't work as well on the front side. The front side really needs to be stretched. The back side doesn't need to be stretched at all, and that's the next thing I'm going to talk about. But the basic idea, that short, that locked short tissue, if I start stretching this tissue without rolling it, what's going to happen? Tighter, right? It's going to get tighter. So on one front side of me, I've got this. I've got knots. I've got tissue that's now shortened and more dense. On the back side of me, I've got tissue that's lengthened and more dense. They're just different types of dense. So why we stretch? Great quote. Tightness of the anterior hip structures results in increased compressive loading to the facets during the push-off phase of gait, since the femur cannot be brought back into hyperextension. Therefore, the lower extremity is placed behind the body by extending the pelvis under the lumbar spine. Kind of long, but what does it basically tell us? If my hip's tight and I go to walk, when my hip stops, my back keeps going. So if I got tight hips, I'm going to have a sore back. And this is another, we're going to get to core, but the solution to bad backs is loose hips. But the solution to loose hips is rolling and stretching. So we've got to realize, I always talk about the idea, there's a formula, there's a recipe. And if we think about the idea of formula or recipe, what that means is that you can't change it. There's not a menu of training where you get to go in and pick, like I'll have one of these and then I'll finish with this. No, that's not how training works, at least not in my mind. Training works very specifically. Here's the recipe. Foam roll 1, stretch 2. Got to do it that way. Can't not do it that way. Because first we've got to restore the normal movement, feel, action of that muscle tissue. Then we've got to try to restore the normal length so we get good joint kinematics. So we have to stretch. And for us, and sometimes I think roll the backside, stretch the front side. If you just want to make it really, really simple. I think roll the backside, then roll the front side, then stretch the front side, but don't stretch the backside. That's a little more complicated, but true. Why we stretch? Anti-stretch research is not compelling. We didn't stretch for a while because people say, well, you lose power if you stretch. That's what, I don't know, let's say 20 years ago somebody told me that, and someone came in and said, we shouldn't be doing any more static stretching because it decreases athletes' power. Like a moron, I just listened to somebody tell me that and we stopped stretching. I was like, ooh, I don't want that. That would be really bad. Decreases in power are bad, stretching is bad, we won't stretch anymore. And plus, I was like a meathead weightlifter type. I didn't really like stretching anyway, so it was a really easy thing for me to give up. It's like someone said, you got to give up asparagus. Like, perfect. I'm done with it. Don't need it anymore. You know what I mean? It was literally that fast. Like, okay, stretching's bad. Hey, we saved 5 minutes. Perfect. We don't need it. We were wrong. We were absolutely, positively dead wrong. I sent this article, so effects of static stretching on vertical jump performance. And what they basically said in the article, this is how the article was. You did a vertical jump test. You walked up, you did your 3 vertical jumps. Boom. You went over, you did 8 minutes of static stretching. Like 4 exercises, 2 minutes of each one. Then you walked back over, you jumped again. Everybody's vertical jump got lower. I said, no shit, Sherlock. I would not. If we said that, if I gave you all that question in a test, that what do you think is going to happen, everybody would go, I think they probably wouldn't jump as high. But you realize that never happens. No one does that. We're not telling anybody to do that. But the end result was this, statistically significant loss of power. So one day I said, I'm going to go look at the statistically significant loss of power. So I went and I actually pulled the study up. Non-counter movement jump decreased from 21.2 to 20.3, and I went, wow, 0.9 inches is statistically significant, huh? That's not really, it's like 5%. It's not huge, right? You know, counter movement jump decreased from 23.3 to 21.8, 7%. Not really a big number. When you start thinking, well, what's my trade-off, you know, if I'm not stretching? And one of the things I said, would you trade that for health? So I started putting it in my own strength and conditioning coach mind. And I said, okay, if I'm coaching the Cavaliers and I say to somebody, all right, here's the deal. I want the guys to roll and stretch every day. And someone says, well, you know, that means LeBron's vertical is going to go from 38 inches to 36.5, you know. And I'd be like, but if we keep him healthy and he plays in every game, do you really care about that? I said, you know, if I said to the coach, here's a trade for you. LeBron gets hurt, doesn't play, or LeBron stays healthy and he plays, but when he's healthy, he's only got a 36.5-inch vertical jump versus the 38 that he had before. Every coach in America is going to be like, we'll take the 36.5 option and have him playing because we know we're way better. And so I sent this, and then it's interesting. So one of my friends is a research guy, and I said, Chris, what do you think? He said, statistically significant, practically irrelevant. That was his response. That was all I got back in the email. He said, read this study and tell me, am I right? Am I seeing what I think I'm seeing? And he was like, absolutely. 8 minutes of stretching causes power decreases in the 5 to 7% range. Not a big deal. But then what we realized, if I just went and warmed up again, which we're going to do anyway, that loss is washed away. So the reality is that this whole thing is moot, because that's not what we were going to do. We weren't going to say to somebody, static stretch, and then immediately do a power activity. We would never do that. So, but we end up with all these people who don't stretch. So hopefully now we've got you to think rolling matters, stretching matters, getting things back. You know what the other thing you realize, a couple things about stretching. One, you don't stretch muscles. You've never stretched a muscle in your life. We're somehow manipulating this fascial envelope. You know, it would be, I always say to somebody, I'm back to my bag again, right? If I told you to stretch, it would be like if I put a chicken breast in this bag, and then I gave it to you with the chicken breast in it, and I said, stretch the chicken breast out. You'd be like, you'd be doing all kinds of stuff, and when we were done, I said, I'm going to take the chicken breast out, and I'm going to measure the length. Like, oh man, you didn't change the length of that chicken breast at all. But you mauled the bag. That bag is really different now. That's what's happening. We've got this fascial envelope that we're probably manipulating, and then you think, how much stretching do you need to do? Here's the best idea. The best rationale for stretching I ever saw was this. That's how much room I need for a joint to work right. The width of a piece of paper. If the joint surfaces are not in contact with each other, I'm good. If they are, then I'm getting hung up and I'm like, ooh, impingement, ooh, that hurts. But it's not like you got to make a half-inch of space. You got to make the space like the space around a door frame probably. So when someone, they don't ever get more flexible. Like they don't need to get a lot more flexible. They just need to get a little bit flexible. And you'll do that with people sometimes where they'll stretch, and then they'll get up and they'll be like, oh, it doesn't hurt anymore. Because it's not impinging anymore, because those joint surfaces aren't bumping into each other anymore. And it doesn't have to be real significant. And in fact, you might with your own eye never notice the difference. So did we throw out the baby with the bathwater? That's the question. My answer is yes, we threw out the baby with the bathwater. We threw out static stretching because we had this research that showed up and said it was a bad idea. Does everyone know where throwing out the baby with the bathwater came from? Yeah, see, I have more. I'm going to give you more obscure information than you're ever going to be able to use in the course of today. But basically, the babies got the last bath when they used to bathe everybody in one bathtub. So sometimes they would talk about not losing the baby in the bathwater because it was really dirty. Just a little bit of trivia for you to expand your knowledge for the day. I won't worry about that. So why do we do core? Why do we do core the way that we do it? When we start talking about core training today, why do we do it the way that we do it? You know, why aren't we doing all these stupid twisting things, okay? Because anti is the key word in core training. When we think about what the muscles do, it's not what they do, it's what they stop you from doing. Okay? Because if you think about it, how many people think the abdominal muscles bring the rib cage towards the pelvis like in a crunch? Don't answer, because I'm going to tell you you're absolutely wrong if that's what you think, because that's not what they do. Because if we think about like what day-to-day life, ask yourself how many activities are there in which you are bringing your rib cage down towards your pelvis? I always said the answer is 1, getting out of bed. The answer for me is 2, because I'm a napper. So once I'm going to do 1 crunch to get up, and I'm going to do another crunch to get up later. Other than that, that's not what they do. What do they do? Well, if you watch the average American walk around, what you realize is they keep your pelvis in position and your guts from hanging out. They are anti-extension muscles. That's their job. They're not flexors. So when we think about this grand science of functional anatomy, we realize it's not a flexor. Why would we work it as a flexor? Right? It's not what it does. It's a stabilizer. Its job is to prevent anterior rotation of the pelvis and extension of the lumbar spine. Those are its jobs. That's what it's supposed to do. It does not flex your trunk. But we all learned, what did we all learn? We all learned what I call dead person anatomy, right? In dead person anatomy, they tell you what would happen if you contracted a muscle in a cadaver. So it's like if I have the cadaver, like if I could lay the cadaver up here like this so the leg was hanging off, right? And then I could stimulate the quad, the leg would extend. Therefore, the quadricep extends the knee, right? If I flipped said cadaver over and I could stimulate the hamstring, boom, the heel would come up towards the butt. Okay, the hamstring builds the heel toward the butt. Does anyone think that stuff happens when anybody's alive? Okay, when does this happen? I have the same tired jokes. Hopefully most of you guys have not seen me. If you're a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest, okay? Otherwise, it never happens. That's not what the muscles do, right? What do the muscles do? Well, when I put my foot on the ground, boom, what'd they do? They all prevented flexion. Every muscle in my lower body does the exact same thing. It stops me from falling on my face. It stops my knee from hitting the ground, right? And then when I push off and I go the other way, what do? They all initiate extension. They all do the same thing. Every muscle in our lower body does the same thing, which is why suddenly it makes so much sense. Oh, I get this whole functional training idea. This is why we want them to do, squats and lunges and one-leg squats, and this is why we want their foot to be in contact with the ground, because during the day, their foot's in contact with the ground. How hard is this? You know what I mean? Like I remember listening to Gary Gray, like 1986 or something, and going, oh my God, we are just stupid. I can't believe we did the things that we did, because he suddenly started to explain functional anatomy, and I went, never thought about that. You're so right. And then we changed what we did. I mean, we haven't had, like I look at people, we haven't had a leg press, we haven't had a leg extension machine, we haven't had a leg curl machine. We're into decades now, not years, but decades where we have not had these things because they don't make any sense, because that never happens. There's no real life application for that. And why breathing? We're talking a lot about breathing. Okay, I can go with why breathing? Because we need to breathe, right? And I used to be the one I always said, I'm apologizing to all the yoga people I used to make fun of, but I'm wrong again. And there'll probably be 1 or 2 more things along the road here that I'll be wrong about. But I had a guy in here who was talking to us about breathing, and one of the things that we realized as I'm listening to him talk, I'm like, how long can you go without food? The answer is, I think, somewhere about 21 days before you'd actually die, right? But how much time do we spend talking to our clients about nutrition? A lot, right? How long could you go without water? Maybe 2, maybe before you die, right? Spend a lot of time talking to our clients about hydration. How long can you go without air? Some of you guys might be under a minute, okay? But how much time do we spend talking to our clients about breathing? Generally 0. We don't even address it. How many of us understand the function of the diaphragm, really understand it? I would say that until 2 years ago, I had no idea how that thing worked, because I used to think it's not a real muscle, it's like a fake muscle. Can't lift with it, can't do anything with it, so what the hell's the point? I remember my friend Sue Fascial saying to me, it's my favorite muscle of the body. I'm like, is it really a muscle? Idiotic statement, just so you know. And I will show you why it's an idiotic statement. Actually, never mind, it might be in here. Let's go back. So what we do know with breathing is when we inhale, our diaphragm contracts concentrically. Diaphragm is a dome-shaped muscle. We take a breath in, our diaphragm flattens out. The best example I can find for that, you ever play the parachute game when you were at camp as a kid, right? And you know, what are you going to do to get the parachute to come down? Everybody runs backwards and pulls, right? That's the diaphragm. That's breathing. That's how it works. Do you know what helps you to exhale? Your deep abdominal muscles. So we'll give you the simple example, then hopefully we'll show the video. So, in this, PRI, Google value of blowing up a balloon. It's really cool. So what the PRI people do is they tell you to sit here. I should have got balloons, but I wasn't thinking about it. They tell you to sit here, put a balloon in your mouth. You got to blow up the balloon till it explodes. There's only one way to do it. You'll realize as you start going through the process, is that you have to inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth. Cap the balloon off with your tongue. What you realize after performing the exercise is your abdominal muscles get really tired. And then you realize that we're supposed to be breathing in through our nose, and we'll talk about that, and we're supposed to be exhaling out through our mouth. The other thing you realize is that when you look at your clients and you tell your clients what to do, particularly if you've got older clients, if you've got clients that are, say, over 40, even though you might say to them, okay, I want you to take a really big, deep abdominal breath through your nose, they'll go, because I used to be people, so you got to look at their breathing and see how their breathing is. And I'd be like, how the hell? I have no idea. I wouldn't even know where to start evaluating breathing. And then I made the simple mistake of just asking somebody older. I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to lie on your back. I want you to inhale through your nose. I want to see your stomach inflate. I want a big exhale. I want your abdominal muscles to flatten. And he went just like this. And I went, does your neck hurt? And he's like, all the time. I was like, okay, you know why? Because you switch the pump to up here. When suddenly the pump becomes upper trap, sternocleidomastoid, and scalene, neck pain. And when someone's breathing like this, they're going to have neck pain. They may have upper back pain. They may have shoulder pain. And it will all be related to the way that they breathe. If you start getting them to normalize their breathing as part of their warm-up, their neck pain, their shoulder pain will probably go away. How can I tell you that? Because my neck pain and my shoulder pain have gone away. Last 2 years, I used to be one of these guys like, getting a massage every 2 weeks because my neck goes out. Didn't know how to breathe. Old. Too much time sitting. Start working on that, everything changes. So if you think here, and this is all I want you to do, just inhale through your nose and then exhale. Then I want you to inhale through your nose and exhale like you're going to blow out candles. Now I want you to inhale through your nose and exhale like you were really going to blow out candles, like you were at my birthday party and there were 55 of them, right? What'd you feel? Stomach. Diaphragm in, deep abdominal muscles out. I'm 100% convinced we have been completely wrong with all the draw in, brace, all the stuff that we did. All we need to do is tell people to breathe. Breathing is reflexive. Breathing, when we do core work, when we tell them to breathe correctly, exhale on the concentric, everything we want to have happen will happen, and we won't have to say anything artificial. See, this should work because Wi-Fi works in here. So, those are my kids with their World Series shirts on, in front of the World Series banner. And I'll show you this. So 11:09. And then we'll give you guys a quick break.
The primary muscle of respiration is the diaphragm.
Oh, that's interesting.
The diaphragm is a thin,
hold on one sec.
layer of muscle and tendon.
Let's see if we can get this. I don't know why it won't mirror displays in this view. There we go.
That separates the abdominal cavity from the chest cavity. It gains its shape from its attachments from the organs that surround it.
So inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, right? So when we think, suddenly this muscle that we're looking at, okay?
The primary muscle
it's flattening. My ribs are moving. All these insertions along my thoracic spine are moving. There's all kinds of stuff going on. It's pushing stuff down, and then it's getting pushed back up. It's pushing stuff down. It's getting pushed back up. Really important, particularly more so with our older clients who don't have that good rib movement anymore, don't have that good thoracic spine movement anymore, and don't really probably understand how to breathe anymore. Successful, much more so than I thought it would be, to be honest, in a very short period of time. So you're going to get exposed to it this afternoon. I'm not going to click on these links because what I realize every time I click the link it screws up the PowerPoint, but this was a really good breathing review that Mike Reinhold did, which is well worth looking at. The big thing to understand is that your parasympathetic system is your repair and healing system. So when you want to decrease stress, you want to increase parasympathetic activity, breathing does that. This is why the yoga people, I always said the yoga people didn't know what they were doing, they only knew that it worked. And that was always my objection to the yoga people. I used to always say, you know, some woman who got certified off a matchbook was trying to tell me how to train people. But the reality was, from a breathing standpoint, they were right. I think the rest of it, they're all wrong, because I don't believe in, that's too much stretching and it's the wrong mobility. There's a lot of things I don't believe in, but the breathing part and, you know, the increased parasympathetic response is something that you want to facilitate. This is why, you know, breathing, meditation, all this stuff. I mean, there's really science, much more science behind this than we think. In the reverse, your sympathetic, when your stress is up, your sympathetic drive is up. And so by getting people to work on breathing, you're going to be able to bring that back down again. One of the things I said in science, I really should have paid attention. I didn't pay attention to this in school, ANS, PNS. I was like, who cares? It's never going to have anything to do with me. And then I realized I was completely wrong. That was not true. And that suddenly we find out, wow, this has a lot to do with us, particularly more so in personal training. Because again, if you think the people in personal training are generally affluent. The people that are at your clubs are generally affluent. With affluence comes stress, unfortunately, generally speaking. So these are the people that need it more. And we talked about this idea of re-understanding draw and embrace is just really, it's breathing, integrating core and breathing. So when we do our core work, we're going to tell somebody now, just for instance, if we're doing quadruped opposite type stuff on the ground, we're going to tell somebody, exhale. I'm not going to tell them draw in, brace, tighten your abs. I'm going to say exhale hard. I'm going to tell them blow out candles. I'm going to tell them try to move the dust around on the floor, okay? Because that's what's going to get the response that I want automatically instead of artificially. This is another really good article on the Mercola site. Most of it's here. When you breathe through your mouth, many of the things that are supposed to happen don't, because the air bypasses that part of your respiratory system. It's not supposed to go in your mouth. Your nose is a filter that was designed. What's one thing you notice? You ever do any really dirty, nasty work where there's a lot of dust? What happens when you're done? You blow your nose, what do you get? Black boogers, right? That's what you get. Because your nose is filtering. You get all these hairs in there that are helping to stop that stuff from going into your system. It's designed to do that. Air is warmed and humidified before it hits your lungs, okay? This is the really big one. Nitrous oxide is made by your nose and sinus mucous membranes. That may be one of the reasons that meditation, relaxation, that kind of stuff, nitrous oxide is laughing gas. So when you've got somebody laying there and thinking about breathing and okay, there's a lot of things going on. There's a nervous system effect going on. There's a biochemical effect going on. There's a lot of stuff that's going on that we're kind of skipping over. So how do we integrate that? This is one of the ways we integrate it. This is my favorite way to integrate it, what we call a floor slide. So all he's doing on that up, exhale. If you watch his stomach, you'll see up, and then as he exhales, down. What I'm going to tell people, if you're doing this right, your abdominal muscles and your shirt should look like shrink wrap. Everything should look like it's, that's correct exhale. Inhale, big, exhale, flat. And you'll see a lot of people who struggle to stabilize their core. When you start getting them to exhale, all of a sudden, those bellies that pop out go away. Actually, I'm going to skip. Well, I'm going to go over this really quick. I really do think that we don't work hard enough on our pulling movements, but I should have probably almost deleted this. I'm going to show it to you because it's interesting. Actually, it's in the wrong place anyway. That's really interesting. Don't even worry about that. And we're going to keep on the core training idea. I apologize, slides are a little bit out of order. Core training is really a process of neuromuscular reeducation. When we start talking about core, what we're really talking about is teaching somebody. Shirley Sarman, and this slide will pop up, but I'll get ahead of myself, talks about getting the right muscle to move the right joint at the right time. What we want to be teaching somebody when whatever core exercise they're doing, the arm and leg movements are really designed to try to stress the core. So if somebody bridges, yeah, the exercise is for their glutes, but we're trying to work on their core stability. We're trying to see what happens when they try to move their hips. When somebody is, in that quadruped position and is reaching, we're looking at what's happening at their spine. And I think in a lot of cases, people have not figured that out. And so they look at the movements instead of looking at the central part, the core, literally. We always talk about this idea of core stability. Well, in core stability, the core should be stable. That shouldn't be complicated, but it gets that way. The other thing to think about, and this is Stanley Paris, we talk about the stuff that gets lost in the shuffle. Stanley Paris might have said this in the 20s. Pain never precedes dysfunction. If someone comes to you and says, my low back hurts, something's wrong. There is a dysfunction. There is something that is causing that pain to happen. One of the things I tell people all the time, very rarely do we ever focus on where someone says it hurts. If someone comes in and says, my knee hurts, I start looking at their hips and their ankle. Someone comes in to me and says, my back hurts, I start looking at their hips. And a lot of times people will be like, they think you're stupid, they'll go with you for a while, and then you're like looking at all these hip range of motion, do this, do this, do this, and then they'll be like, you know I said back, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, I know you said back, but I said backs are just stuck in the middle, knees are just stuck in the middle. All these things are stuck in the middle, and it's the lack of motion of these other joints that causes this stuff to happen. That's what we've got to understand as we go forward. So, if your blank hurts, whatever it is, something's already wrong. If your knee is sore, I can guarantee you something just didn't go wrong with your knee. I think we waste a huge amount of time in physical therapy in the United States with icing and heating and doing stuff at the pain site. Someone comes in and goes, it hurts right here. Okay, we'll spend an hour here. Waste of time. That's just the repository of your problem, or the depository of your problem. So with core training, what are we going to tell you to do? Two things to avoid. Repeat flexion. You do need range of motion. I'm not saying your spine does not have to be able to move. I'm saying you do not need to move it repeatedly. In other words, repeat flexion, no crunches. If you're doing crunches, you are wrong. It is a good way to get somebody hurt. That is the only thing it is good for. The muscles don't ever work that way. They're not flexors, they're stabilizers. We know that part. We also know that if you look at McGill's research, if you want to blow up a spinal disc, you put the pig spine in a crunch machine. That's how they do it. They do repetitive crunches in order to make the disc explode. I did not have to hear much more than that in his lecture to be like, okay, we won't do that anymore. And we were like everybody else, we did crunches, we did sit-ups, we did all this stuff. We stopped because the people smarter than us said, not a good idea. In the same way, attempting to increase rotational range of motion, bad idea, and we'll talk about why. Rotation of the lumbar spine is more dangerous than beneficial, and rotation of the pelvis and lower extremities to one side, while the trunk remains stable or is rotated to the other side, is particularly dangerous. I'm going to repeat that for you because I want you to understand this. Rotation of the lumbar spine is more dangerous than beneficial, and rotation of the pelvis and lower extremities to one side, while the trunk remains stable or is rotated to the other side, is particularly dangerous. What's that? That's rotation of the pelvis or lower extremities to one side while the upper body remains stable. That is what was classified in Sarman's book as particularly dangerous. This stuff that I just demoed, and I'm going to let that run again, is the worst stuff you can do. You got someone with back pain, never let them do these things again. As far as I'm concerned, never let anybody do this ever again, ever. Scorpions, leg overs, crossovers. It is a bad idea. It has no why. It has a why not. It doesn't have why. There are some people say, oh, I'm doing it to mobilize my thoracic spine. Right? Well, if you are, that's a really shitty way to do it. Because the one thing we know about the body is what moves first is what moves easiest. The body does not have that much. That's why I had all these bands here, right? Because this is a beautiful analogy. let's just say center band, lumbar spine. This band, really tight hips. This band, moderately tight thoracic spine. Okay? If you can help me out right here. If I said to you, I want to stretch my hips, but I'm going to start up here at my T-spine, how long would it take me to get my hips to stretch? Exactly. Really long time, right? And what would I stress the crap out of in the process of trying to do that? My lumbar spine. In the same way, if you said, hey, I want you to stretch the T-spine, go ahead. Damn, what keeps happening? That lumbar spine keeps, and people are like, oh, if you bend your knees, if you do this, you stabilize your lumbar spine. You can't stabilize the least stable part of the system no matter how hard you try. The body has these inherent levels of stiffness, and it moves where it's least stiff. You can't try to go through a loose area to get at a tight area and expect to get the result that you want. If you want T-spine, you've got to figure out a way to get T-spine from up above, which is literally as simple as doing this. Being in quadruped, there's a lot of ways you can go after T-spine without going through your lumbar spine. And there are people who still try to justify this to me and argue with me, and I'm like, it's physics, guys. You can't, you can't argue with that. And the other thing I know, and this goes back to my personal experience, I had chronic back pain for 20 years. I stopped doing this stuff maybe 05, 06. I used to think I could only sleep 5 hours because after 5 or 6 hours, my back would hurt enough that I would have to get up and walk around. So I never slept more than 6 hours. And what got me out of bed was back pain. When I stopped doing all this rotational stuff, my back pain went away. So now I have days where I sleep 8 hours and the occasional day where I sleep 9 hours if I go to sleep early enough. If I go to sleep at 9, I can stay in bed till 5 o'clock in the morning. I'll still get up early, but I won't get woken up by pain. So in this, again, science. So if we think about this, during the most activities, the primary role of the abdominal muscles is to provide isometric support and limit the degree of rotation of the trunk, which, as discussed, is limited in the lumbar spine, right? Rather than considering the abdominals as flexors and rotators of the trunk, for which they certainly have the capacity, their function might be better viewed as anti-rotators and anti-flexors of the trunk. The day I read this in this Mechanical Low Back Pain, Porterfield and DeRosa's book was like light bulb. I never thought about this. I never thought about training these muscles as stabilizers. Never thought about training them as what they were supposed to be. Yes?
Are you okay with the lumbar spine rotation as long as there's a proper thoracic movement and a breathing technique like Brett's?
Yeah, I don't like the Bretzel. No, I think same thing. I'm not a fan. Gray doesn't like the fact that I don't like it, but I don't like 90-90. I don't like Bretzel. And I know because being a back pain sufferer, no matter how hard I try to stabilize in those, if I do those exercises, my back hurts the next day. So we do not do any rotational stretching at all that way. Because this is the important thing to understand. This is we start getting into the why, the science, right? The overall range of lumbar rotation is approximately 13 degrees. The rotation between each segment from T10 to L5 is approximately 2 degrees per segment. Lumbar spine is designed to be stable. They're big and they're thick and they're created to take load. They deliberately don't have much range of motion capability, right? The thoracic spine, not the lumbar spine, should be the site of greatest amount of rotation of the trunk. When an individual practices rotational exercises, he or she should be instructed to think about the motion occurring in the area of the chest. So, if I'm going to have somebody, if we're going to chop, lift, whatever we're doing, I'm going to be telling them all the time, move your head, move your shoulders, move your head, move your shoulders. There'll be some motion here, but imagine back in the good old days, we were doing chopping, like, things like this, where you, wood choppers. I used to look at people like, wood choppers? Who needs wood choppers except a wood chopper? Right? I mean, that's a dumbass exercise. Trunk roll, stuff, twists with a medicine ball, with a bar, with a medicine ball. I'm like, these are just ways to get yourself hurt, particularly if you have crappy hip mobility. And then people say, oh, but I work with golfers and I work with tennis players. And I'm like, well, freaking watch golf then. Right? Watch what happens. Watch Tiger Woods. What does he do? Internal rotation of his hip. His spine doesn't go very far. He hits the ball. He ends up looking like this, straight ahead at the wall. All the motion is occurring in his hips. And you talk to a golf pro, what does he talk about? Hip turn, shoulder turn. He never talks to you about lumbar spine turn because he knows that doesn't happen. Doesn't happen in any sport. But, you know, why can't we do what we always did? That's what everybody keeps going back to. Why can't I do what I always did before? This is my favorite one, though. If you can squat and deadlift big weights, you don't need core training. This is the ultimate meathead morons statement. And you'll read it all the time. It's, you know, it's internet famous. Oh, don't worry, I can squat 500. I'm like, so because you can lift things with 2 stable points on the ground, that somehow translates to this. Again, let's go over our functional anatomy, right? I think it's here. No, it doesn't. But as soon as I take my foot off the ground, lateral glutes become stabilizers, adductors become stabilizers, quadratus lumborum becomes a stabilizer. It is entirely different than this. It is completely irrelevant how much weight I can lift with 2 stable points in the ground, because what goes on in my pelvis is entirely different. They don't have any bearing on each other. And you know, Gray Cook calls it adding strength on top of dysfunction. And I said that's what we used to do. That was my job in the 80s. I added strength on top of dysfunction for a living. You know, I took football players that didn't move very well and were not great lifters and asked them if they could lift more weight than they did the last time for a living. It was a good living at the time. Postural Restoration Institute, if you get a chance, go look at it. That's all. I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about this, but I think the Postural Restoration Institute, which is a group out of Lincoln, Nebraska, is probably, they're very confusing. They've not got it figured out yet in terms of how to teach it. They've got their own terminology. It gets really messy. But basically what they're saying, and we'll do the poll right here. How many people in this room write with their left hand? 1, 2, 3, 5, actually. So we're a little over, because we've got 33 people. It is, in the general population, it's 10%. If you have a room with 100 people, you'll generally get 10. That's the first time I've ever been more than 1 over. But the point is, the other 85% of you are right-handed, which means as a right-handed person, you are prone to particular levels of dysfunction based on the fact that you do everything the same way all the time. You always, if you shoot a layup, you shoot it right-handed. If you jump left-legged. If you lift for something, you lift right-handed. You will not do things left-handed naturally. You may not think about it, but, you know, you have to learn to brush your teeth. If you get hurt, it's hard to brush your teeth with your left hand. I realized I eat right-sided. I never thought about it. I had a couple fillings put in the other day, and they said, don't chew on that side. I couldn't chew. I was like, I'm trying to chew like lefty. I'm like, I can't really chew lefty. No wonder I have cavities on the right side. And so these guys were the first people to really talk about not symmetry, but the effect of asymmetry and the effect of being we're all left-hearted, which means that our right diaphragm is different than our left diaphragm. You know, and they said there's like 1/10 of 1% of people that actually have their heart on the wrong side. But in general, we've got very predictable levels of dysfunction. It's just something to look at. We don't have time to talk about it. Last thing, why unilateral training? This is the last thing I want to hit on. And I'm trying to think, yeah, I got 20 minutes. We'll be all right. History is really interesting. This is why I said I always think that one of these years at one of these big strength coach shows, I'm just going to do a talk just about nothing but history, because I really think that most of us, as I get older, I realize there's less and less people who have an understanding of the history. Like when you start talking about Nautilus and one set to failure and, you know, all the controversies that were there, people look at you like, I don't know what you're talking about. Because you guys wouldn't. You guys weren't around. You just didn't, it wasn't part of what you grew up with. For us, it was a really huge deal, you know, in the 70s and into the early 80s, this whole Nautilus, you know, isolating muscles, you know, the exact opposite of what we're doing right now. But look at this. This is a magazine, Strength Magazine, 1922. And this was one of the most great, you know, you talk about serendipity or fortunate accidents or whatever. One of my friends was in a rare bookstore, and he grabbed me a couple of these old magazines. He said, oh, Michael probably liked these because they show weightlifting in the 20s. I happen to get one of them. I start flipping through it, and I get to this page. You can't read this caption, but this says squatting on one leg will do a lot more for you than squatting on two. This down here says a variation of the exercise shown above. What does that tell you? It tells you that in 1922, they thought squatting on one leg would do a lot more for you than squatting on two. And that two-legged squatting was a variation of one-legged squatting. Fast forward 80 years, and we have the exact opposite. Squatting on two legs is the norm, right? And squatting on one leg is considered unusual. Yet when you look at this, common sense. Again, when we talk about unilateral training, I say to people, how many legs do you walk on at one time? How many do you run on at one time? Everything that you do, unless you are a rower, right? You do everything one leg at a time. There are very, very few true two-legged sport skills. But because of wide world of sports, again, who's over 50 besides me? Okay, so we got 4 or 5 of us here. Wide World of Sports was a show where they showed sporting events. Used to have powerlifting on it. Used to have Olympic lifting on. What we were exposed to in terms of strength sports revolved around people on 2 legs trying to lift as much weight as they could in the squat, in the deadlift, clean and jerk. That's what we were told strength was. So when we started thinking about strength training, what did we do? We went to those people and said, how do you get strong? And they said, oh, you do these things. These are the important things to do. What they didn't say was, these are the important things to do for my sport. They just said, these are the important things to do, and we all believed them because we didn't know any better. I start looking at this now and thinking now, this is one of the big, what if the way we always did it was wrong? I think without a doubt that, I have no clients that bilateral squat, none left. We do bilateral deadlifts. We will do 2-legged trap bar deadlifts, not even conventional straight bar deadlifts. That's the only bilateral strength exercise that we do. And as soon as you show me any sign of back pain at all, that immediately is gone. Like if you said, if you have back pain, you will not deadlift. You will do everything unilaterally. Because that's life. Get up and down stairs, get in and out of your car, whatever you're going to do, it's all unilateral. Why shouldn't everyone squat? Again, I said I'm not going to jump to these links because it's screwing up the PowerPoint, but this, if you, I'll get Casey to send this presentation out to you. I was just realizing you guys don't have it, but this is just a presentation of different hip structures, which is pretty amazing to realize that hips are incredibly different. When you look, you won't believe the difference in relationship of the femur and the femoral head and the femoral neck and all that stuff on different people. It's crazy. But it explains why you have some clients that can squat and some that can't, at least in some ways. What we do know, what the back does not like, the back does not like inflexibility. Because we showed you that floor slide example. Think about this. I wrote an article about this a couple of years ago. If I can't, so we'll show you wall slide versus floor slide. But if I'm here, right, so this is a wall slide, right? I'm a little tight. What do I do so I can get flat? I arch my back. So what we realize is the compensation for lack of external rotation in strength training is lumbar extension. And the moment I realized, I didn't read it, one day I was like, that explains to me why I have these people who squat perfect and still say their back hurts. Because we talk about those facets getting jammed up, right? There's somebody who's in that really big arch position trying to get the bar in their back, and they might do a perfect squat, everything exactly the way you want it to be done, and then they might still walk out of there and go, that bothers my back. And I used to look at that and scratch my head and think, why can that person squat perfect and have it bother their back? Until I realized if they don't have external rotation, they're going to jam their lumbar spine up trying to get their hands back there. What are most adults lacking? Shoulder flexion and external rotation from sitting so long. So again, particularly our adult clients, nobody does it. Torque. So again, I'm back squatting. I come up and I rotate a little bit. Low back doesn't like that. Shear. I'm back squatting and all of a sudden I'm having trouble. My butt gets up a little higher. My butt's moving, the bar's not, and then I stand up. That's shear. My back doesn't like that either. Compression. Heavy loads. My back doesn't like that either. My back doesn't like any of the things that happen in squatting. It's not good for you. And we know that. The low back research shows us that. But we keep doing it because it's the king of all exercises and real men should do it. Stupid. We just keep doing stupid things. I always tell somebody, it's like slamming your hand in the car door and saying, yep, I'm going to wait for it to heal. Then I'm going to go outside and slam it again. Boom. And then I'll let it heal up again. And then I'll do it a third time. Why would you do that? Right? You're like, you're killed. Wasn't very smart. Even when I argue with strength coaches, about putting a weight on their back, like, oh, what are you talking about? I said, okay, here's what I want you to do. I'm going to put your hand on the floor, and I'm going to put 500 pounds on it. I'm just going to keep piling 45-pound plates until we hit 500 pounds. What do you think about that? Most people will be like, I don't think that's a really good idea. I said, well, why would you expose your lumbar discs to that? Do you not think like your spine and your spinal nerves are maybe a little more sensitive than your hand? But people don't think about it that way. They just think about, well, this is the way we've always done it, right? We always did this way. And the guys on the internet say this is right, it's okay. And a lot of them lie, and a lot of them, when they get hurt, they realize it wasn't okay. Torque and shear. This is another thing, and this has nothing to do with anything. Look at what has the greatest lumbar spine load. Trying to lift dumbbells in a seated position. One thing we've realized is that dumbbell training for people with back pain is particularly stupid. Okay, if I have someone who comes in with back pain, the last thing I want them to do is try to pick up heavy dumbbells, to do a dumbbell incline, to do a dumbbell bench press, because those are the highest loads that are measured. Second would be a two-leg straight leg deadlift, where they hang the weight out in front of them a little bit. And, you know, again, these are not, this is, I forget, Punjabi or one of these, Grasovetsky, somebody, I forget whose chart it is, but again, somebody way smarter than us. So as we said, this is that floor slide example. If he can't get that position, we're going to get a big lumbar arch. And the thing I like about with unilateral training, this is what I think is most interesting. When I talk to the conventional meathead and I say, why do you lift free weights and not use machines? He says, because you get way more balance and stabilization with free weights. You've got to stabilize the bar. You know, with a machine, you don't stabilize. I said, well, what if I said to you I had a way that would give you way more balance and stabilization than doing it with two together? No, I wouldn't do that. Because it's different, right? So I would reject the identical hypothesis I just used to defend why I do what I do, because now you're telling me to do something that I don't do. And that's where we are right now in the internet world, in the strength training world, in the personal training world, is people, they're just struggling, dying to defend their point. Like, okay, I'm right. I know I'm right. I know in my heart I'm right because I always did it this way. You know, and they're the guy who's looking to steady the horses. So this is what we talked about. Boom. Get up on one leg. Glute medius, adductor, quadratus lumborum. It's just different. Single leg stance is not the same as double leg stance. That's just anatomy. And this is the last piece of this whole thought process, which I think is the most interesting piece. Bilateral limb deficit describes the difference in maximal or near maximal force generating capacity of muscles when they are contracted alone or in combination with the contralateral muscles. A deficit occurs when the summed unilateral force is greater than the bilateral force. I'll give you the simple example of this. Hand grip dynamometer. Someone gives me a hand grip dynamometer and says squeeze it with two hands. Let's just say I get a score of 200. If I had a hand grip dynamometer in here that allowed us to squeeze with two hands, and then I gave everybody a single-handed test, you would all be higher than that 200 number when I let you combine right plus left. That's what's called bilateral deficit. And the basic idea is that the body, and this is the theory, and it's not, again, European Journal of Applied Exercise Physiology. Sorry, let's just see. Never mind. I don't think I have the other one. There was another reference, but basically, the theory is that your body is not made to work bilaterally. Neurologically, the body finds bilateral exercise confusing. It's not made to work that way. And we see it. We actually tested all our Olympic girls. You'll see these girls in the next clip. But we tested their standing vertical jump with two legs, and then we tested right and left leg. 28 out of 29 were higher right plus left than both. They all had a bilateral power deficit. You know, we had, if their vertical jump was 25, they tended to be 13 and 14 right and left. And all of a sudden their combined was 27, which gives them a little bit less than 10% bilateral deficit. We see the same thing. Now watch Megan. This is Megan Duggan, who's the captain of our Olympic team. These are 80-pound kettlebells, 36 kilos. So that's 160 pounds in her hands, total. She bangs out 160 for 10 pretty easy, right? I don't believe she could squat 320 pounds once. I've never tried, but I don't think so. I know she couldn't do it 10 times. Again, the naysayers in the group will say, well, that's because she's using her back leg. So we'll show you why that isn't true in a minute, not right now. This is Ben Bruno, one of our former coaches. This is 305 pounds. So he's got, I think, like 6 weight vests on right now. And he's got 170 pounds in dumbbells, and then the remaining like 130 or so in weight vests. But that's 305 for 5. He cannot squat 600, and we do know that. He's tried. Most he's ever squatted is in the 5s. So his bilateral deficit is significant, because if you think 305 for 5, it probably gives him, if we tried to create that as a 1RM, it would, let's just say he can split squat 350, which if we doubled it would give him a 700 squat. he's in the 5s. So even if his back leg was contributing, it's not contributing enough. But this is the real clicker or kicker. Watch this guy. This guy actually just sent me a copy of his new book, Max Schenk. Max is about, I'm going to say he's 165. He's about 5'8", 165. That's 315 pounds. Okay? 315 for 5, one leg. Now there, you can't say his other leg's doing anything. The only thing that can move that bar is the glute and hamstring and adductors of that leg. There is nothing else going on. And again, with Max, the good thing, the reason I use Max in that clip is because I know, like he said, I think he said his best deadlift was 585. If you figure that out, that 315 for 5 gives him, again, let's just say 350, we'll make it an easy round number. Puts him at about 700. It gives him a bilateral deficit in the 20% range. So the point is that we know that this exists. So the idea is that you can use more weight on one leg than you could on two if you were simply cutting the math in half. This goes back to our idea why we pull heavy, and we're going to kind of finish here so we can let you guys go to the next part. This is Kendall Coyne, who plays at Northeastern, was on our Olympic team. That's 45 for 5. She cheats a little. But I don't mind it. I'll take a little cheating on test day. But 45 for 5. And I'll go back. Well, actually, I'll let you see. This is Ed Lippy. So Ed also was a coach here. Just moved to Italy to work with AS Roma, which is a soccer club over there. That's 135 for 3. So he's got, you'll see it when he spins around. We made sure we got that on the clip. That's 3 45-pound plates. And the point being, I would not advocate chin-ups with that kind of load. I don't even know if I advocate chin-ups anymore for our adult clients. But the point is, they still need to be strong, really strong in their upper back. Most of us are really unbalanced in terms of our ability to push and our ability to pull. So if I've got adult clients, I'd be looking at things like TRX rows and ring rows and trying to see how many of those they could do so that I kept them out of that kind of flexed impingement zone. But I would still be really putting a lot of emphasis on them pulling heavy. So the basic idea as we lead into this practical part for you guys is this idea of starting with why. And I want to see if I can get to this last slide. I had some stuff on Olympic lifting, but we're not going to worry about it. These are the books we talked about. Start with Why. Made to Stick, which I didn't mention, really good book. Jim Collins, Creating Magic. Lee Cockrell, Never Eat Alone. Chris Farazani. I love First Break All the Rules, which we did not talk about. I think it's the best business book I've ever written. Marcus Buckingham. Slight Edge, best book I've read in the last couple of years, Jeff Olson. And then we talked about Anatomy Trains by Thomas Myers. But the big thing is for you guys, when you leave here after this afternoon session, what I hope is that on Saturday, on Sunday, you're thinking about, okay, what am I doing? What am I doing in every session? Why am I doing it? Does it make sense? If I can't find my why in that exercise, I probably should take it out. And more importantly, if you're looking at how I'm organizing my sessions, what we're hopefully going to do is look at it and say, okay, is everybody rolling? Is everybody stretching? Because we've shown you that there's a really big why as to why your clients need these particular things. But eventually what it will all come down to is this idea of change. Am I willing to change? Or do I just feel like, no, I just want to do it. Stop bothering me. I just want to do it the way I've been doing it. I'm hoping that we'll have that kind of impact on you. I'm hoping that we get emails back from people saying, wow, I've gone back and my clients are rolling and stretching and people feel better and I'm having a bigger impact. Because you wouldn't be here on a Friday if you didn't want to have a really big impact on somebody's life. You wouldn't have taken the time. You wouldn't have driven from New Jersey. You wouldn't have taken the time off. You wouldn't have do whatever you had to do to get here today. So I know everybody's heart's in the right place, and hopefully after today, your head is in a little better place. And I would say we'll take questions, but I don't know, 12:45 we're starting? Oh yeah, we got a couple minutes. I got somebody coming at 12. I got a client coming at 12, but we got a couple minutes. So if anybody has questions. The other thing I will tell you from a question standpoint, I am not an individual question person. If you do not have the nerve to ask the question when everybody's here, you do not get to ask the question. So if you have questions and you think, oh, I'll just grab them after the session's over, And I'm going to say, remember, I told you I wouldn't do that. Because you're depriving everyone else of the opportunity to learn because of your cowardice. See, it always gets at least one out. See, I know. It's like a standard ploy. Yes?
I have a question.
Okay.
Are you going to take questions?
Yes.
On the pole and stretching, you're a big advocate of doing that prior to
Yes.
the workout.
Always first. Because again, what we want to think about is that Play-Doh analogy. You know, like we don't want to take stiff Play-Doh and go through the whole day and then moisten it up at the end when we're done. Or hope it gets moist during the course of the workout. The first thing we want to do is impact, because when you think, what are you dealing with? You're dealing with muscle tissue and nervous system. You want to impact that muscle tissue and nervous system right from the get-go, beginning, first thing.
Good mornings versus SLPO.
Nothing, we do not do any bilateral bending. We do not, so we won't do this. We will not do this. We may do some kettlebell deadlift. I'm not a fan. I try to get these guys. Once somebody has the pattern, I don't want the pattern loaded. I would much rather see that unilateral single leg deadlift pattern. One, because again, it's the way we do things. It will be really rare that somebody actually tries to pick something up like that unless they're a mover. And that's what they're doing for a living. Most people, when they go to bend over, will naturally do that sort of golfer's lift sort of movement. So again, for us, I mean, bilateral at the very beginning to get movement patterns down. Once we start trying to get somebody strong, it'll go to all unilateral. We will not spend a lot of time trying to build bilateral strength.
What are your bilateral deficit examples of the lower half or extremity?
I don't know if the upper half works in the same way, and I think somehow the core screws that up because now you're trying to transfer stuff through. So when you think about, you know, dumbbell bench or dumbbell incline, I feel like there's something that limits you, and I couldn't give you a really good explanation beyond that. But we have not seen people, you know, that can grab a single dumbbell and single dumbbell bench more than half of what they can bench press. And in fact, it tends to be 10, 20% lower. The other thing is I wonder sometimes if it's because we've spent so much time on upper body pushing, and I wonder if we actually took someone and really tried to do it, if it wouldn't in fact work. Because most of us, if you think about, you know, particularly with males, you know, we've really overextended ourselves to be able to, I said, if people squatted as hard as they bench press, you know, you never see somebody in the squat yelling like, give me 5 negatives, you know, and having somebody spot them through it, but you'll see some idiot in the gym all the time doing it. So I don't know, I don't have a great explanation for that though. What else we got?
This is more of a business question. We've always done some abnormal things. If you look at a lot of assessments, we always look at breathing, pretty familiar with PRI and different stuff. But how did you handle always going against what's expected? For example, if we train a lot of college and professional athletes, we always got them ready for combines and things that they were training for.
Well, I think there's two things, and that's a really good question. One is you still have to get them ready for what they're training for. So I think, you know, in that regard, you know, if somebody's got to do, like for us, you will see, like on Thursdays or on Wednesdays, you'll see kids back squat in here, and it will just be college kids who are going to school and have to get tested in the back squat. You'll see some kids clean from the floor, which we don't do either. So we will help these kids, you know, particularly, it's really college kids, it's not the pros, help them prepare to do well in their testing when they get to school. But we let them understand that this is not what we believe, it's not what we're going to base the program around, but yes, we will help you to get ready for what you're going to do at school. With the pros, what I found with the pro athletes is very few of them are resistant. Because most of the good thing, pro athletes tend to be fairly, even if they're not academically smart, they're very intuitively smart, and when you explain to them that, hey, this isn't good for you, they will generally be like, okay, I'm good with not doing it. You will get some resistance. Like when I was with the Red Sox, we had a couple guys that back squatted and wanted to back squat, and you know, you have to pick your battles a little bit. In here, we don't pick our battles with our pro clients, and we've developed a system, as we said, to get that college kid what he needs to be able to go back and do his or her testing, but without making it central to the kind of programming stuff. It's not in the, it's practiced, you know what I mean? So that's the difference. It's in their program, but it's not, you know what I mean? It's not in their program. It's not like you have back squats today. Today you're going to practice for your school test. So yes, it's in there, but how we're approaching that with them is very, very clear in terms of this is you practicing for a test that we don't really want you to do, but we know you're going to have to, versus this is us, kind of caving into the way that you want to train. So I think it's a perceptual thing, but it's a perceptual line that we draw very firmly so that kids don't misunderstand. Like if a kid says, no, I got to come in, I got to back squat twice a week, I'm like, you got to find someplace else to train. If you're coming here to train, you're training the way that we want you to train. But we also don't want you to go to school and be unprepared or, fail a test or get in trouble with a coach or look like you're not, on the same page as your strength coach, that kind of stuff. But it's a difficult line.
On that same question, do you have a standard time when you have to practice it? You have to practice?
It's always the day 2 lower body workout.
Okay.
So in general, like that, if we're, we might have them, say for instance, they might hang clean on day 1 and split squat, and then on day 2 we'll let them clean from the floor and back squat if they have those 2 tests, so that they can. But it's really like for me, and it's almost more like I teach them how to beat the test. Like I'll teach our kids, like, okay, here's how you hang clean. I want you to deadlift it really, really, really slow, and then I want you to do the hang clean that we've been teaching you. And then what happens is most of them still end up going to school, and they're like, oh, I did more than everybody in the hang clean, or in the clean from the floor. And it's like, okay, perfect. Same thing like we have some girls that have to back squat test, and I'm like, I usually tell them, what did you back squat last year? And like I did 225. I said, okay, let's go in this year and do 235. After 235, just tell them you're done. You go up, the coach isn't mad at you, you got stronger, everybody's happy. But we're not going to try to set records and things that we don't think are important. Yes?
So I understand about the formal stretching before to get the muscle fiber. We do a dynamic warm-up before. What do you guys do for a cool down after?
We don't really do much. If people want to roll and stretch when they're done, but I always feel like that's closing the barn door after the cows got out. You know what I mean? It's the same idea. It's like now we're going to try to get that Play-Doh and throw some water in it now that we're done. I want it before. But for us, it's foam roll, stretch, dynamic warm-up. So that dynamic warm-up is always there. It's just in a different spot. And the idea is that we're going to be more prepared to do that dynamic warm-up effectively than we would otherwise. Last one, because I got a guy who's actually sitting out there waiting for me, I'm pretty sure.
Over your certification, I think a lot of the colleges and programs where they have testing is due to some of the data that exists, just due to the old ways of testing things. So in your certification process, have you given any thought to creating any type of data capture on testing in new ways, whether it be single leg?
Yeah, well, we've done, like with our hockey girls, we've actually done that split squat as a test. So, we can establish for somebody really clearly that all of these girls, like, it's really funny. When we first started doing it, we had an NFL guy come in 3 summers ago, and we're doing split squats, and he's got like 20 kilo kettlebells, and he's banging them out, and all of a sudden Megan walks up with 28s and rips off 10. He looks at me, he goes, yo, dude, I got to get going, huh? And I was like, yes, you do. You got to get going, because you're weaker than, and that's what happens. The good thing about what we're doing, when these people come in and see someone like Kendall, they look and see, she's doing 25 for 10 in the chin-up. It's not hard for me to convince a guy. I'm like, all you want to do, I just need to be stronger than the girls. So when you can beat the girls, we're good. And but most of them in the beginning can't. So it ends up, a lot of this kind of sells itself over time. And we've been lucky in terms of we've had an evolution time where people are expecting maybe certain things when they get here, and they don't come. I think if they're not expecting that, like there's always a meathead place to go, there's always a CrossFit place to go, but we've got a different reputation, I guess, and I always tell people, if you want to get better, come here. If you want to get hurt, go someplace else. Really, and I'm very open. I'm like, I'll tell people, you can go someplace else and get hurt and then come back. And we have that all the time. We have people who train here, and then they think, oh, I want to do more squats. Okay. And then usually the next day you see them again, and they're telling you about their doctor's visits and their therapy and their back problem, and gee, you guys were right, and that wasn't a good idea. So it works.